George Harrison, Bob Mortimer, Kathy Burke, Rodney Mullen, Satoru Iwata, all people I would invite to a dinner party, be they living or dead. And to that list, I now add Rod Serling. Rod Serling, creator of The Twilight Zone, hand in writing 92 of the show's 156 episodes over the 5 seasons it ran from 1959 to 1964. Each episode a kooky nightmare of sci-fi, mystery and thriller, meant to evoke the action and aftermath of World War II, the space race and rise of technology in the household, or acting as allegories writ large over the hub of paranoia around the Cold War and communism. This is a snapshot of America at its most idyllic, with white picket fences, booming economy, and sky-high national pride. Yet Twilight Zone is there to uncover the darkness that lurks within. The biggest shows of the era comforted the ego of the American viewer. Just look at CBS, the station that commissioned The Twilight Zone. In 1963, CBS held 14 of the 15 most viewed shows of the year, with all-American faces like The Andy Griffith Show, The Dick Van Dyke Show, and The Danny Thomas Show. Reassuring father figures, domestic settings, and family values, clocking in 30% of the viewing audience each week in a bygone era of monoculture. Meanwhile, Twilight Zone sought to bring the booming era of short story science fiction out of the science fiction mags, newspapers and issues of Playboy, and into the living room. It's not the first anthology TV show like this, but it is the one with the largest impact, and it's a miracle the Twilight Zone ever got made. Still, it appears Rod Serling's work was never easy, and sponsorship changes, censorship, and fluctuating satisfaction levels of the studio meant that budgets were lowered, whilst critical acclaim increased and viewership maintained its modest numbers. But through all the compromises, it's amazing to think we still get such a great show, with great performances by the then young actors such as William Shatner, Robert Duvall, Robert Redford, and Dennis Hopper. But enough waffling, let's start with number 10. Number 10, The Midnight Sun, written by Rod Serling. Speaking of oddly prescient, this episode sees a world that keeps getting warmer, so hot that life has become unbearable, with the sun constantly in the sky, never setting, as nature and natural resources dwindle, and common comforts like water become a hot commodity worthy of violence and strife. This episode is beautifully shot, with a palpable sense of heat leading to dread and delirium in once comforting domestic settings, as everyone slowly sweats through their clothes. My favourite part of this episode is that the protagonist is a painter whose paintings slowly bleed and morph due to the heat, showing how this endless heat will not only kill every human being, but destroy all evidence of the human race with it. Magical stuff. Number 9, The Lonely, written by Rod Serling. Some Twilight Zone episodes are riddled with plot holes, not just in-universe plot holes, but just general jumps in logic and low plot IQ characters. That's why I like, but just cannot bring myself to love the classic episode Time Enough at Last. We have a man whose one obsession is reading, but he can never get any peace and quiet. He finally gets what he wants when everyone dies, leaving him all alone in the world, and yet it takes him ages to think about reading a book, and even then he spends all of his time putting the books into little piles rather than reading the damn things. These plot holes and contrivances are just as, if not more apparent, in The Lonely, yet somehow I don't care. The premise is deliciously silly. Prisons on Earth have become so overcrowded that prisoners are now sent to their own asteroid, one asteroid per prison, an asteroid with an Earth-like breathable atmosphere, where a warden comes to visit a couple of times a year to check in on the prisoner, in an impractically perilous journey from Earth to each of these asteroids. Our prisoner in question is deathly lonely. He's somehow made his own car though, and his one friend in the world, a kindly warden with not enough time to play a makeshift game of chess with the prisoner, provides our protagonist with an unexpected companion. Of course, irony strikes by the end of the show, and it's as dramatic as it is farcical, and I love it. There's no moral story here. What's the message supposed to be anyway? Don't overcrowd your prisons? Or don't stick men alone on an asteroid against their will? I have no idea. All I know is that I was thoroughly entertained by the premise and its execution. Nice one, Rod. Number 8, The Old Man and the Cave, written by Rod Serling based on a short story by Henry Sessler, who himself was a highly accomplished short story writer with his stories making for some of the most fun sci-fi magazine front covers. The Old Man in the Cave is about irony and greed in the face of faith. It's been 20 years since nuclear war was killed off 99% of the world's population. The episode follows a small town that grows impatient with their meagre existence. They remain alive thanks to a supposed man that lives in a cave that has been giving them sporadic cryptic advice that has kept them surviving but not thriving. Only one member of the town can talk to this old man, whilst the rest of the town have never seen from or heard from this supposed old man in the cave. Civil unrest occurs, and the catalyst for this is a small patrol of self-assigned military men. At first they threaten with guns, but soon come to realise how miraculous the town's prosperity really is. The town has years worth of canned food that the old man in the cave decrees none shall eat. The military men take umbrage with this, mobilising the town's hunger and scepticism to demand the canned food is eaten and further demand to see this omnipotent, unseen old man. What they find in the cave is a lot of fun, and the conclusion is still devastating 60 years later. This is quintessential Twilight Zone, almost like a parable from the Bible, made better still by some of the show's most economic storytelling and exceptional performances by the episode's two key players. One is stoic, calm, almost neglectful. The other has a magnetic energy and rebellion of a charismatic leader peddling easy answers. The whole thing has this nice angel and devil dynamic that I really love. And oh boy, that ending, once again, devastating. Number 7, The New Exhibit, written by Jerry Saul as a ghostwriter for Charles Beaumont, who came up with the concept but could not write the actual script due to an undiagnosed brain disease. Season 4 of The Twilight Zone is quite interesting. It has half as many episodes, but each episode is twice as long, taking an hour time slot rather than the usual half hour, due to a mixture of scheduling and budgetary reasons. This is both good and bad. The good thing about bad Twilight Zone episodes is that they're only 25 minutes, without ad breaks, so whilst it's bad, it won't be bad for long. Though, if good, these longer episodes could delve greater depths of character development, adding more pathos and realism within the plot that a normal episode just didn't have the time for. Take He's Alive as a good example, basically a straight-laced version of Jojo Rabbit that would feel gimmicky in a half-hour show, but with a whole hour, Dennis Hopper manages to make you sympathise with this oddly childlike neo-Nazi character. That same level of nuanced performance is offered to prolific Hollywood character actor Martin Balsam, who is the protagonist of this episode. The plot is pretty simple. Man works in a waxworks museum, his favourite exhibition being that of a famous serial killers. The museum goes out of business until the man offers to keep the waxworks in his basement, only his obsession blinds him as the waxworks models start killing people. It's simple stuff. Chekhov's waxworks, as it were. The audience see a wax dummy and they're just waiting for it to come to life. But it's Martin Balsam's acting that really takes centre stage, really selling his desperation and increasing mania. You're never quite sure how cognizant he is of what's happening. When the waxworks start killing someone, he just kind of scolds them like a child. He covers up for them, completely enthralled by them. Add this uneasy performance to dread-inducing directing of the killing scenes, and we have a genuine horror film that passes on ultra-conservative primetime television in the early 1960s. Number 6. Number 12 Looks Just Like You, written by John Tomerlin, based on a short story by Charles Beaumont. We all love a good coming-of-age story. Figuring out our own place in the world, discovering our own individuality within the confines of what the world expects of us, but never have these expectations been so rigid as they are in this episode. Conformity is the word of the day for our teenage lead, as she is pressured into picking a new body for herself out of a handful of off-the-rack presets. Her dismay is fueled by the mysterious death of her husband, following his own transformation, and the girl's desire to keep her own body is met with complete bewilderment from all around her. She gets the same message from her mum as she does from her best friend as she does from her doctor. No one understands her. The feeling of isolation and of not being heard and of growing expectations is a perfect analogy for puberty and adulthood, and society's desire for us to lose all of our childlike wonder and fit into specific categories of work, pay, class, and social status. Thankfully though, it's not all teenage angst in this episode, as we also have fun with sci-fi high-fashion camp outfits to enjoy. What else is sci-fi for except for crazy fashion choices? Number 5, On Thursday We Leave for Earth. Whilst talk of Twilight Zone is often about giving praise to the show, it is worth mentioning that there's a great deal of repetition within the show's catalogue. You've got trips down memory lane episodes, the Where is Everybody episodes, and the case with this entry, we have the We're on a distant planet that somehow looks like Earth episode. However, space is not the star of the show here. Instead, it is an interesting character study of a sort of character I've never really come across in fiction before, but I have seen it a lot in real life. The episode follows a band of humans who have been desperately trying to return to Earth for the past 30 years, with their leader a pragmatic paternal figure that keeps the hope alive with his tenacious search for a signal from Earth during the day, and regaling all with his stories of Earth by night, to a captive audience of many who are too young to remember living on Earth or have never actually been there. Suddenly there is a signal from Earth, everyone is going to be rescued, we get the super fun mega happy ending. Only this is season 4, the episodes are an hour long, and we're only halfway through. What follows is a subtle shift in how we see the main character. He's got so used to caring for these people that he cannot imagine a world without them. His congregation want to splinter off and live in different parts of the world. They want to be free, but the main character does not think they can survive in the real world. His desire for their safety and security is jeopardizing their freedom. He thinks they need him, but it's in fact he who needs them. As the screw turns, I'm reminded of overbearing co-workers and work colleagues and managers, people who struggle to change, people who desire control no matter how small or trivial, desire for ownership, and in a less insidious way, just a desire for a sense of purpose. Number 4, The Silence, written by Rod Serling and based loosely on Chekhov's 1889 short story, The Bet. This episode has a great premise. At a gentleman's club, we have a central conflict between an overly chatty young man who is desperate for money and an older miserly type that is desperate to get the young man out of the gentleman's club. A bet is devised by the old man. If the young man can stay silent for 1 whole year, the old man will give him $500,000. The old man has gone to great lengths to achieve this, including getting a formalised contract drafted and building an observation room in his house to ensure the young man doesn't talk. This is a rather ugly episode in which no one looks good. The young man is arrogant and boastful, the old man is deceitful and resentful, and what unfurls is a delightfully contrived character story that brings drama, tension, and great performances by both involved. And the ending, far different from the one in Chekhov's original story, is probably the best ending in the entire show, steeped in the show's trademark wicked sense of irony. Number 3, Living Doll, the second of 3 episodes written by Rod Serling as a ghostwriter for Charles Beaumont. A lot of Twilight Zone episodes were spoilt for me thanks to The Simpsons. This is true of Nightmare at 20,000 Feet, Little Girl Lost, The Little People, and this episode, Living Doll. Only the original Twilight Zone takes things in a different direction. This is not a Chucky-style doll bent on murder. It instead acts as a guardian for the neglected stepfather, being a voice to a quiet little girl that lives under the tyranny of her stepfather, played expertly by Telly Savalas. Whilst the Twilight Zone could be considered progressive for the era, it is hardly a feminist show, but it does often make masculinity the target of its ire, and that's no truer than here in this episode. Telly Savalas as the stepfather is a controlling, petulant man whose lashing out stems from the feelings of emasculation from marrying into a family. Fears of divorce, remarriage, and less conventional family setups are explored in a level of intimacy rarely seen in the show. As discussed earlier, so many of CBS shows have lovable, dependable father figures, but Telly Savalas and this episode gave a glimpse into many people's real-life living situations, and gave them a power fantasy to hold on to, in a living doll that is not willing to remain a victim of domestic oppression. Number 2, And When the Sky Was Opened, written by Rod Serling and based on a short story by Richard Matheson, one of only 2 times both writers worked together on the show, the other being Third from the Sun. Richard Matheson's stories can feel like an odd fit for the Twilight Zone. Matheson's works has been adapted time and again with films such as I Am Legend, Real Steel, Duel, The Box, and The Incredible Shrinking Man. However, many of Matheson's stories are too grand or too psychological to fit neatly into 25 minutes, such as the rather weird The Invaders or the unfathomable otherworld of Little Girl Lost. They have a level of ambition that pushes at the constraints of the show's format, budget, and runtime. but I still love them. For me, his best is And When the Sky Was Opened, because it feels like a more self-contained and character-driven episode. The story is about two astronauts that leave for space, then the space station loses contact with them, and then they crash land with no memory of what happened to them in space. The majority of the episode takes place in narrated film noir style flashbacks, as one pilot tries to convince the second pilot that there was in fact a third pilot on their ship, and that this theoretical third pilot has been erased from everyone's memories. The flashback framing devices allows for a lot of story to be compacted into a short space of time, while selling the fear of having someone be erased from everyone's memories, with only one man's flashbacks as evidence they ever existed. Of course, the second pilot does not believe that there was a third pilot on board, but slowly things unravel further and spiral into a plot of paranoia and intrigue, followed by an ending that is equal parts terrifying and cheesy, in a way that only the Twilight Zone can deliver. Number 1, The Shelter, written by Rod Serling. How odd that my favourite episode of the Supernatural TV show has no supernatural or science fiction elements at all. This is a simple story about a man who has made a bomb shelter, much to the amusement of his friends and neighbours, as they think he's just giving in to paranoia. Only for those same friends and neighbours to plead with the man to be let into the shelter once there are reports of an incoming nuclear bomb. Should the man let them in? Is there enough food for them all to survive? Should he just let some of them in? Who can decide which lives are worth saving? How should those without the shelter react? Should they plead, bargain, or take the shelter by force? This whole episode is a ticking time bomb. It has suspense, lots of great acting and interplay between the characters, a fun set that is beautifully lit, commentary on the threat of real-life nuclear war, and a moral to the story. In a way, the perfect Twilight Zone episode. And what goes well with the perfect Twilight Zone episode? I'll let the main man Rod Serling tell you.
Now, this isn't just a word from the sponsor, it's simply a very good suggestion. It stands for real refreshment. Before we meet again, try Oasis for the softest taste of all.